stay curious, get scrappy, and trust your gut. And if you don't have a gut just yet, trust your best practices and then start having your own original ideas. I'm Jade Pruett, and this is SEO in 2026.
Jade, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
Forget best practices. SEO in 2026 is about moving beyond checklists and leveraging your own expertise to build effective, trustworthy, and AI-ready strategies.
Okay, so I'm keen to explore your first sentence there. Forget best practices. What best practices do we need to forget?
Totally. I notice a lot in the industry that we've gotten a little bit stuck in our checklists. I feel like that's our safe space as SEOs often, especially when you work in an agency setting. Maybe you have a productized system that you offer your clients. And so your SEO has kind of been limited to, we're going to create this amount of blog posts every month. We're going to follow these rules that we see online about what matters and what doesn't matter. And we're going to, provide our SEO services, whether they're really moving the needle for the client or not. And I think in 2026, especially as we're seeing AI search coming out, things are changing with Google so quickly. It's time to just take a step back and really trust our own guts on what's really going to move the needle forward for our clients.
So trust our own guts for an AI-ready strategy. Is it not better to maybe ask the AI what the best strategy should be?
That could be a part of trusting your gut.
Okay.
I love to ask AI what it thinks, but also we've noticed a lot that it's just repeating information that other people are putting out, which may or may not be true, which kind of creates this echo chamber of what is best practices.
So do you think this stems back from the Google leak in 2024? Because we were talking beforehand and then you shared with me that that was a bit of a reality check.
Totally. That was such a fun, interesting time to be in the SEO space. And I feel like it hit a lot of people kind of in this Santa isn't real way, where we had really been trusting our information that we were getting, especially from Google. And it would have been really ideal if we could trust all that information. But through the leak, I think a lot of the things that we had been thinking or things that I had been thinking were ranking factors, weren't ranking factors, even if the information we were getting was different. I think we kind of realized we could trust our guts more. Like those things that we thought were ranking factors, even though Google was saying no, were actually real.
Got you. Okay. So things like anything in particular?
I remember click data was a big one that people were like, it always felt like that was legit, but then we kept being told absolutely not. No one's paying attention to that on Google's side. What you put in the URL slug, everyone was like, no, not a ranking factor. Turns out is a ranking factor. And then there was one when I was just researching again, where we always had this gut feeling that smaller websites were not actually getting the same credit as larger websites. And it turns out that there was a tag that Google was kind of putting on the back end to make it harder for smaller personal websites to rank. That always kind of felt like the case, and then it turns out that that was accurate.
Do you think Google has changed much in their algorithm since then?
That's a great question. I think, yes, there are some things that seem like they've kind of either self-corrected or Google has made those changes. And then other things, not really.
So, as you say, curiosity is the new best practice. So instead of blindly trusting guidelines, use your own eyes and data to test, explore, and uncover what's really working. How does this work in practice? How do you methodically, strategically use curiosity as part of your ongoing SEO tactics?
That's a great question. For a little bit of backstory, I quit my full-time job and started my agency in October of 2022. I had been running it as a side hustle up to that point, finally was able to quit my job. And then, of course, within the next 3 weeks, ChatGPT hits the scene, and it just feels like this is going to totally disrupt everything in the entire world, but especially in the SEO realm. And my first instinct was just to ignore it as much as I possibly could. And someone finally mentioned to me to not be Kodak or Blockbuster, Like actually adapt with the times and stay curious and see how you can allow this to serve you as opposed to just ignoring it because it intimidates you and, letting it end up taking over your job. And that ended up being like the best advice I could have gotten. And I think staying curious is not relying on that checklist. It's not like, oh, well, this particular publisher says that blog posts just need to be 500 words long. So that's going to be the benchmark that we uphold with our clients. And let's just crank out the content and make sure it has headers and whatever. It's really paying attention, getting excited about SEO again, which I think a lot of people are feeling very burnt out, especially with all of the changes and all of the craziness going on with AI, but having fun with it and getting scrappy and kind of getting back to why we got into this field in the first place.
Do you think that some SEOs are still burying their heads in the sand when it comes to the likely impact of AI on search?
I know that they are. The ones that I'm following on LinkedIn seem to be getting excited about it finally, or really expressing that it's burning them out. But the ones I'm following are not particularly burying their heads in the sand. But I do know that in the past year, SEO agencies have been just selling like hotcakes. And I think a lot of people are like, I don't want to adapt. I just want to jump ship and sell this.
I think the intriguing thing from my perspective is I speak to many SEOs as part of the series, and some SEOs are saying we've got more than 50% of our traffic from AI search, and others are saying no, it's 1%, it's 2%, it's nothing. It's a nothing burger just now. Just focus on Google just now, and we'll see what happens over the next year or so. But the reality is that search behavior is probably changing, and that the way that content is consumed and the place where content is being consumed is changing as well, directly within ChatGPT and other AI engines as well. What do SEOs really need to do to adapt when it's so hard to track, isn't it? It's so hard to actually know how many people are consuming your content on AI search engines and what impact that has on people typing in branded terms and visiting your website later on.
Totally. And I would say it depends on every single website and who your users are. There's so many things we don't know about AI search. There's no clear keyword research tool or something like comparable within AI just yet. And so it really is that time to experiment and see what's going to work. And I think some of the metrics that we're tracking kind of need to pivot a little bit.
So you say that bold experimentation can yield massive results, much like the early days of SEOs. And then you also mentioned there that your metrics need to pivot. So what's an example of incredible results that an SEO can achieve by adapting, by experimenting? And what metrics should they focus on now?
Totally. One example of some very exciting results that I've had for a client this year is a niche travel service in Alaska. From what we understood, their primary target was older people traveling on cruise ships who were finding them on Google, also a little bit on Bing, which is always fun, or just seeing advertisements on the cruise ship and like booking an excursion with them. But they were super intrigued by AI. And I was, at the time, the narrative was, oh, this is primarily going to work for B2B SaaS and other things in like the tech world. But we were like, let's do some optimization anyway. We use Scrunch at my agency, which is a lot of fun. And we saw incredible results for them. And they're currently getting at least 50% of their organic bookings from ChatGPT now. We did not expect that result at all.
And is that directly from ChatGPT? So you can measure it directly as a referring source?
It is. And it's unexpected because a lot of people's behavior right now is to see a brand name in an LLM and then go Google it. So it's like they might be getting even more traffic than we're aware of from the LLMs.
And in terms of metrics that an SEO should focus on nowadays, what's perhaps a metric that used to be effective to focus on but isn't so relevant nowadays? And is there another metric nowadays that you tend to focus on more?
I think this is where we have to get away from best practices again. I think for every single client, the metrics are going to look different. For this particular client that I just mentioned, they used to get a ton of traffic in from their blog, and now they just aren't. But their revenue is going up, and they're ranking now in Google and in the LLMs. and getting more people in the door. So it's like, it's fine that your blogs aren't really functioning that well for you anymore. We're still cranking them out and we're seeing their visibility within AI, but they're not quite serving the same purpose they used to. But it's like, at the end of the day, if we're getting the conversions, everybody's happy.
Exactly. And I was going to ask you about your phrase there, the blog's not functioning as well as it used to. But then you talked about the content perhaps being consumed by ChatGPT or consumed in ChatGPT as well as by ChatGPT. And that means that I guess it's harder to measure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the blog isn't as effective as it used to be.
Right, exactly. And another thing outside of AI search that we're seeing is just keyword rankings within our SEO tools are feeling a little bit more off than we realize. I believe like Google searches are just getting so much more bespoke to the user that being like, oh, you're ranking in position number 2 this month is just inaccurate. It'll be different from what I Google versus someone else. And so we pay a lot more attention to clicks for those particular keywords that we can see in Search Console and other tools. And also, we'll just look at the organic traffic going into those individual service pages to really track what's working, what's not working, as opposed to being like, oh, you're in the second position, we did it, and then, calling it a day.
Have you talked to stakeholders within businesses that have grave concerns about where SEO is going, about less measurable traffic from that, and about them actually wishing to invest in other marketing channels instead of SEO because it's not perhaps as measurable as it used to be?
Yes, and I just feel like that's incorrect information, and typically I try to change their minds when they come to me and say those things. I see it a lot with professional services on a local level. I think they really want to see the payoff of every single investment that they're making. And when things get nuanced and you're like, oh, well, maybe you're showing up in AI search, but then it's showing up as like it's coming in from Google and like all these different things. And it makes it harder to track. They get a little bit wary of that. But I think that's, again, kind of where getting away from best practices comes into play of how we're educating our clients and what we're showing them and like basically how we're educating them and like helping them prioritize what really matters.
So you started off by advising SEOs to really trust their gut a little bit more in terms of actually what is the right thing to do and what is the right metric perhaps to focus on, and perhaps the piece of content that's more likely to resonate with a customer or resonate with an AI search engine. But how does an SEO learn that? If an SEO is perhaps just starting in their career and they don't have an established gut, what else do they look at online in order to help them make that decision?
That's a great question. I remember, I think for the first 5 years of my career, I kept thinking, I don't think I've ever had an original thought. I'm just going to Google or I'm like reading a particular blog to decide how to make every single choice. And that's fine. Like following SOPs, trusting best practices in the early days of your career just to build that foundation will help you then be able to become creative and develop that gut that you can trust. I would say find just a few people to follow that you really can get behind and trust, as opposed to reading all of the information online, trusting too many different sources, because you will 100% get confused. One thing I've noticed is it's really important to understand the motive of the person who's creating the content around SEO. If they're not practicing SEO anymore and they've just become a content creator, suddenly they might have different priorities for the content that they're creating.
Great advice there as well. So if you're going to take an SEO course, take one from an active SEO practitioner. But if you're taking a course, try to take one or two and focus on that message instead of consuming too much, and perhaps getting conflicting advice from different people.
Totally. Yeah. My LinkedIn feed is hundreds of different people in the industry. And if I was just, trusting the last thing I had read, it would be a wild time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, I think writing the introduction and conclusion for SEO in 2025, the previous series to this, I was saying something like, not every piece of advice is going to be relevant to you. You need to pick perhaps 3, 4, 5, 6 different pieces of advice and run with it because it's more relevant to you and it resonates with you and it's right for you at that moment in time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Hopefully yours will be one of the pieces of content that are run with this year, Jade. Jade, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
Stay curious, get scrappy, and trust your gut. And if you don't have a gut just yet, trust your best practices and then start having your own original ideas.
Jade Pruett is founder of Hello SEO. Find out more over at helloseo.com. Jade, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.